Okay, so that is Hope Fest. This will be our 20th year doing Hope Fest in Tucson. So we're excited. It's October 27th at Keno Stadium, formerly Tucson Electric Park. Now it's at Keno Stadium. The ways you can get involved are multiple ways, but number one, volunteers, obviously. To volunteer the day of the event, we need about 1,500 volunteers on that day to make it happen. Secondarily, if you are an organization that provides a service or a program to the poor, then we want you there to promote your ministry or your program. So on the hopefest.com site, on the volunteer tab, there is a volunteer sign up for general volunteers, and there's a helping agency application on that page too. So please go if you're interested in getting a table there, or if you're interested in volunteering, please go to the hopefest.com website and you'll find all the information. The flyer is downloadable there. Churches can participate in numerous ways. Number one, to get involved with volunteers. Secondarily, to put a prayer team together. Lois helps us with the prayer tents that we have at Hope Fest. So if you have a prayer group that's interested in helping us at Hope Fest, please send them our way. Also, we're asking the church to do donation collections for gently used clothes, for hygiene items, and for children's toys and canned food. So if you can get involved, please do. That's all I have. There's posters and there's flyers on the table, so please help yourself to those on your way out. It is my pleasure now to introduce somebody who I have gotten to know very well through our Phoenix programs with City Fest and Hope Fest Phoenix. Chuck Fitzgerald is with the Arizona State Department of Economic Security. He is a great man. I am privileged to call him my friend, but he's involved in, oh my gosh, Chuck, I didn't bring your bio up. So, he's awesome. So please welcome Chuck Fitzgerald.
Put me anywhere in the agenda but that. I'm honored to be here and to share a little bit about what I'm up to working for the state. I lead what's called the Office of Faith and Community for the state of Arizona. And that's right, I said the word faith. It's actually in the office name, and so I'm very excited to do that. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means and what that might mean for you and for the folks that you serve. To start with, this is the rumor that I'm starting. You know, that's a little funny sounding, but the idea behind this is government doesn't fix anything by itself. I think we all know that. But not everybody admits that, especially in government. But we know that government can't fix anything by itself. There are lots of examples. We can look everywhere and see that. It takes all of us. I don't think the community can do everything by itself either. I think there's a role for government there. And so that's a little bit about what I want to talk about, what those roles look like, and why the Department of Economic Security would have an office called the Office of Faith and Community. So I think I need to point or do something when it's time to go to the next slide here. So. And you can all have access to this presentation. Lisa's got it, and she can get it to you, so you don't have to write down everything that you see or that I talk about. Like I mentioned, I want to give a little bit of a glimpse into what I do, talk a little bit about poverty, talk a little bit about what our agency does. And one thing that was in my bio that was really well written is that although I work for the government, I have for 5 years now, I don't consider myself to be a government person. And I'm resisting that. I spent a career selling software into corporate America. I'm real involved in my community. I belong to the Vineyard Church in North Phoenix, and I'm real involved in that church. And so that's kind of who I am. And so you'll hear me use language that you may not expect a government person to use, but I can tell you there are a lot of people in government at all levels that feel the same way that I do, and that best they can in the systems that they're in. And so there are a lot of great people, whether we're talking municipalities or counties or state, federal, that have very strong faith convictions, and they try to walk it out every day. So I want to encourage you with that bit of news. If you don't get anything else today, hopefully that's one thing you can take away with you. There are a lot of great people working really hard alongside of you, whether you know they're beside you or not. They're working alongside of you. So anyhow, what I want to do is just talk briefly about the agency that I'm in, the state agency. It's the Department of Economic Security, and we, like any big organization, we have mission statements and vision statements and all that sort of thing. But at the bottom of this, you'll see something that's highlighted. One of our goals is to develop the capacity of our communities. I wake up every day thinking about that. What that means to me is, what can I be doing to help the community serve where it wants to serve? That's really what that is. And so, in a nutshell, that's what I do. I brought Regina Weiler with me today. Regina, if you could wave your hand there. Regina runs our Volunteer Engagement Center at DES. And so together, we're kind of beating this drum all the time of whatever it is that we do as a state agency, there's a place for the community to participate in that, and vice versa. When the community is working to serve the same families we're serving, there's a role for us too. And so how do we help to develop the capacity of the community to serve? And that's really what I do. So the next slide just gives you just a little bit of information about DES, and that's what we call the Department of Economic Security. You've probably all heard that phrase, DES. And sometimes we're viewed as, oh, they're the ones that remove children from their homes. They break up families. That's what DES does. Or they're the food stamp people, whatever. We're a lot more than that. In fact, we only remove children when the children aren't safe. So we view it as we save children. And so, or people are struggling, so we provide them with benefits they're entitled to help them through their rough times. But there are a lot of things we do at DES. We have 9,500 employees. If I had more time, I'd name them all for you, but I think we're a little rushed. And we serve all sorts of folks. Obviously, low-income families. And with low income comes all sorts of other things. Things like bad decision-making, right? Because you have the stress of, how am I going to feed my family? And so maybe you know personal stories of people that make bad decisions because they're in a bad spot. And so things tend to snowball for low-income families. They tend not to get better very quickly, and they tend to get bad very quickly. And so there are a lot of folks that we serve. I'm thankful to see the Tucson Refugee Ministry here. We're the Refugee Resettlement Program in Arizona. That's one of the things that we do. And so, there's just so many things, and I don't have much time to go through it, but if someone has a need because of poverty, or they have a need because of a protection issue, DES is there. And so we kind of have those two things. We have the poverty or safety net piece, and then we have protection, which includes protecting children, the elderly, refugees, on and on. So, next slide. So I have a couple pictures here, and I know you can't read anything that's on here, but what this is you should recognize this as the greater Tucson area. These are children that are on the child care wait list right now. Not the dots. Those are child care facilities. Like I heard children earlier, I think there's something here on campus. But if you were to look at the zip code, by zip code, the darker the color, the higher the need in those zip codes. And so you probably won't learn a lot from this picture, other than there's a lot of dark zip codes here. And what that means, if you translate that, what that means is families in those zip codes are having a difficult time affording to go to work. Childcare is one of the #1 obstacles for low-income families for finding and keeping a job. It's even more of an obstacle than the job in many cases. They can't afford the childcare. And so when we talk about what can the faith community do, or what can the business community do, one thing you can do is figure out a way to help get these families back to work. And childcare may be the thing that's missing. And so there's all sorts of data available regarding childcare, but just understand it is a huge obstacle for low-income families for finding and keeping a job. And so what happens is bad decisions are made. Well, I'll leave the children with my boyfriend. Or I'll have the 8-year-old watch the 2-year-old and the 6-month-old. Those kind of decisions come out of those kind of stressful situations where the mom or the dad, they have to work. If they don't work, they don't eat, so what do you do? And so as you're thinking about the families that you serve, the people in your community, that's a very real issue for a lot of these families. So the Office of Faith and Community, I have a mission statement. We have a mission statement. And it's a little wordy, but it's basically how do we help develop the capacity of the community? How do we help the community be more effective at serving the families they serve? A little bit of government speak. There are initiatives and things that I'm involved in, that Regina's involved in, to that end. One is called ArizonaSERVES. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But there are different things that we do to help develop that community capacity. There are a number of groups that meet around the state. I don't think there's any like this group. I was going to say there are a number of groups like this, but I don't think there are any. But there are a number of groups that meet around the state really to educate themselves on what's going on in their community and to figure out how are they going to get involved. And so I provide some leadership to those groups. And there are about 50 of these teams or groups around the state. When we support community events like Hope Fest, like the Blue Ribbon event that you have for foster families here every May. So we help to support those events. So if you can go to the next slide. I have a newsletter. Maybe you've seen it. It's called CommunityConnect. And the newsletter is really about how do you, as community organizations, find resources in the community? How do you find out what's working in communities? That's what this newsletter is about. It comes out once a month. If you don't get this, then I guess back to Lisa. Lisa can show you how to get connected to it. It's in my email signature, so
got it.
Just forward one of my emails and you can subscribe to that newsletter. Next slide. All right, we're gonna have a test on this. This is just for shock value. Is why I put this up there. This is the agency that we work for. This is the DES. And in the upper right, there's a small box that says Faith-Based and Community Initiatives. Has my name in there and has volunteer services. That's where I reside in the organization. And I show you this to bring up the point that across the bottom we have over a dozen, maybe 15 different divisions within DES that all work on different things. One division helps adults and people with disabilities. Another one helps families and their children. Another one helps the unemployed. We're the Department of Labor in Arizona. And so all the unemployment stuff happens in that division. But we're not in one of those divisions. So we're at a different place in our agency, which means I can help community organizations and folks that are serving people. I can help get you connected anywhere in the agency. Where if you happen to bump into someone that works at DES and they're a friend of yours and you want to know how to do something, chances are they're not going to be able to help you other than the program they work in. Because that's all they think about. But Regina and I, we work in a different place. And so we're a great connection point into the whole agency. And so the major program divisions within DES, there's just a list of them, and I'm not going to read it to you. We can go to the next slide. But here's one. We have something called the Division of Benefits and Medical Eligibility. We affectionately call that DBE. All right, because that's too long to say. What we've done in each of the program divisions is we have somebody like Regina and I who's the community liaison person. This example that we're showing you here is for this division, which is the division that handles all the DES applications and all the food stamps and all that sort of thing. Linda is the point of contact for that. So we have a list that has all those points of contact into our agency, and that list is on the first table over there. So if you were to grab a copy on your way out, you'll know whether it's refugees or whoever you're working with, there's a point of contact for you. Next slide. Here's a map of this area that shows all the places where you get an emergency food box. And so these maps are available. And again, that's part of what Linda does. Linda Hammond is she information for you to know where the food's at. And so you'll find links to all this stuff through that newsletter that I was telling you about. Next slide. We help to incubate some ideas that are in the community. For instance, suitcase initiative for children aging out in the foster care system. That's a good example of one of the things we do. ArizonaSERVES is a governor's initiative that is trying to bring some focus to the 5 areas that are listed here. The one I want to talk about just for a minute is foster care. So if we could go to the next slide. On this website, you'll be able to find an overview of foster care. Next one. Or a toolkit that has to do with foster care. So if you're serving or want to help in the foster care system, you know, the CPS system, this is where you can get information on that. And that's ArizonaSERVES.gov. And there's a flyer on the first table that talks about that. Take one of those on your way out too. This particular diagram, of course, I can't see it too well, so I'll look at my notes here. This shows by zip code. The darker the color, the more the problem is, of the shortage of foster care beds in that zip code. So what does that mean, shortage of beds? Well, if a child is removed to protect the child, where does that child go? If there's not a foster family in that community, they could go to Maricopa County, right? They could go to Yuma. And so now how does that family reunify when you have to deal with that distance issue too? So having foster families in the zip codes where the children are being removed is a very key thing to do. Next. And here's just a picture that shows here in Pima County where the children were removed to. And so all these sorts of tools are available at ArizonaSERVES.gov. Next one. So creating and strengthening partnerships, that's really what I'm about. How do I make sure you're connected where you need to be connected, so that when you spend your resources, whether it's people or money or time, you're spending it as effectively as you can and not spinning your wheels or duplicating something. Next. Yeah, I won't read this slide. Another map here. This particular map shows senior centers in relationship to poverty. The darker the zip code, the lower the income. You'll notice that most of the senior centers are not in those zip codes. Most of the senior centers tend to be where the money's at. I know that's oversimplification. But when you have seniors that are struggling to stay independent in their own homes, that may be here by themselves, the resources aren't necessarily closest to them. And so when we talk about poverty, it's not just the fact that the person's in poverty, but where are the supports around that person. And I think one of your future meetings talks about the elderly. I think I saw that on your agenda. So that type of information is also available on ArizonaSERVES. Next slide. So things to consider, and this, I'd love to spend a couple hours on this slide. How do you get involved? I know you're already involved, but how do you make sure you're connected where you need to be, taking the steps that are comfortable for you to take and are appropriate for your organization to take? There are a lot of things you can do. One thing that's very interesting is the world has moved to Arizona. It used to be all the missions were overseas. There's still much need elsewhere. I'm not trying to say that that's not something we need to pay attention to, but the world has moved to Arizona. You don't have to go very far, and I think all of you know that. You don't have to go very far to find people that don't have floors in their houses or running water or things that we would find unacceptable in our own families. Okay, next up. So, someone asked what I do, and I put this in front of them. It's a lot. It's kind of all over the map. It's really about, you know, building relationships with organizations like yours, finding out where it is your passion is, and making sure you have every bit of information that I have regarding that passion, and that you're connected with people that are working in that area. So that's really what I do. And so, I don't know how I'm doing on time, Lisa, if that's good, or you're cutting me off. Okay, so. So with that, one more slide. This has contact information on it. Again, you'll get a copy of this presentation. And if there's anything that Gina or I can do to support you as you serve families,